Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Sights on Sinnoh, the Diamond and Pearl anime podcast, looking at Ash and friends journeying through the Sinnoh region. And this week we have a special movie episode looking at the 11th movie in the series and the second movie of the Diamond and Pearl era, Giratina and the Sky Warrior. Today I am joined by Mannie. How's it going?
Doing pretty good, pretty hyped. It's not just you and I, Will. We are accompanied here today with a special guest as well.
Heyo, my name is Noxtric, but you can just call me Nox. Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. I'm super excited to be on the podcast today.
Yeah, glad to have you on. And for people who might not be familiar with you, could you share a bit of your history with Pokemon? Anything related from the games, anime, etc.?
Yeah. So, I'm a Gen 1er. I started all the way back, which I guess kind of dates me. Oh boy.
Hey, the first step is recognizing it.
Have to come to terms with it that I'm that age now. But yeah, I started all the way back with Gen 1, getting my Game Boy Color and just being like absorbed with Pokemon. And, the anime was, Pokemon craze was super hot at that time, collecting all the TCGs, getting super excited when I get that Charizard back in the day. And then I've been playing Pokemon pretty much every generation, up except for like Gen 3. I took like this weird break during Gen 3. And I didn't really play much. And then I came back later on, years later, and like went nuts into it. And I was like, why did I skip this gen? But yeah, I've now stream Pokemon, not for a living, but I'm like semi-retired, so kind of stream Pokemon as like my daily thing, I guess.
Nice. And who's your favorite Pokemon?
Oh, my favorite Pokemon. That would have to be. I'm gonna be basic here. It is Charizard, but it is. I'm gonna be extra basic. It's shiny Charizard.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, that's a nice shiny. Yeah, I can't fault you for that.
Yeah. Outside Charizard, I will say this: Tapu Koko. I'll go electric. I love Tapu Koko. He is.
Tapu Koko's cool.
Yeah, he's easily one of my favorites.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite gen?
My favorite gen, oddly, and this is like where I base like a lot of my stuff off of, is a Beast Ball, because I love the Alola region. I love a Unova as well, but like Alola, I went insane with Alola. Catching everything like in a Beast Ball. I love the music, the vibe. I just want to live in Hawaii. I don't know. It's and of course, like I said, my second other favorite Pokemon, Tapu Koko, from there. I love Alola. I love the atmosphere.
Yeah, that's definitely like one of my favorite games to play as well.
And Nox, what's your experience with the anime?
So the anime, I have been watching, super hard into the anime in its early incarnations, all the way up until, oddly enough, like I watched through about, I think like half of the Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearls era. Took a break for a while, came back into the Unova. I really fell in love with like the Unova series, and then watched all the way up, oddly, until the Sun and Moon series. As much as I love Alola, I got super like turned off from like Ash's face. And Alola, everyone has told me like, you need to go back and watch this. And I was like, I guess. I heard it gets better like as it progresses forward.
Yeah. It definitely does. And I think I'm like on the polar opposite as to where when I watched the trailer for the Sun and Moon series, I loved the change in animation. So when I found out that like people didn't like that change, I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, that's kind of weird. But yeah, the series definitely does get better as it progresses.
I need to go back and give it a chance. I really do. Especially like I said, with me loving Alola as much as I do, I really need to give Sun and Moon give it a shot.
So one thing that Alola also didn't have much of compared to earlier generations, were movies that tied directly into the anime. And so I was wondering what your experience is with some of the movies before that era. If you've seen any of those for the generations you did, or kind of just stuck to the core anime itself.
No, so even like when I stopped kind of watching during like the really dying I get BDSP on my head during the Diamond and Pearl era. I actually own all of the movies, and I've watched all of the movies.
Nice.
Yeah, it's kind of like I guess you could say a guilty pleasure. I don't know. I really enjoy the movies.
Nice. Same. A man of taste, I see.
That is exquisite palate, you know.
And yeah, today we're talking about movie 11 here, which is Giratina and the Sky Warrior. It sounds like, Nox, you've already watched this and own it, which is great. Manny, what was your experience? Is this your first time watching this movie?
So this was my first time watching it all the way through. I remember catching bits and pieces of it when it premiered on Cartoon Network, because I remember after Cartoon Network picked up Pokemon, they would premiere the movies on Cartoon Network, and this was, I think, right about the time where I stopped watching the anime, just like yourself, Nox. I stopped watching halfway through. But I did want to catch it because the minute I saw Giratina, I just fell in love with its design. So I do remember bits and pieces of it, but this was definitely my first time watching the entire movie throughout.
Got it. And because I think you haven't played Gen 4, is that right?
No, yeah, I skipped Gen 4 and 5, and I came back.
Oh,
thanks to the sub of the Kalos region.
I can't wait to see you play.
That brought me back.
Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl.
Oh no, I'm not buying the game. The game.
Oh no.
Yeah, I'm buying Arceus.
Okay.
Yeah, because I don't know what it is about Gen 4. It just doesn't catch my attention. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I left the games and the anime. Though I was still a fan of Pokemon. Like it was kind of like checking up on it every once in a while to see if it was still flourishing and all that. But Gen 4 and 5 definitely, like, I think it was just because of the for me it was the change in voice actors that kind of turned me away. And then with Gen 5, I wasn't a fan of Tepig and Snivy's design.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
Snivy I can agree with.
Yeah.
Snivy I agree with.
That was a big no. Yeah, that was like a big no-no for me, so that's why I kind of stayed away. Though I did watch a bit of the Black and White series because I wanted to get back into it. But I don't know what happened. I just kind of like didn't get fully into the anime. I think I just went in like 3 episodes in, and it wasn't enough to kind of help me back. But then again, it was like, oh, like I wonder what the anime has been doing so far. And I found out about the XY anime that was already airing in Japan. And within the first episode, like I was hooked back then. And since then, I've played obviously Pokemon Y because I love Ilvetal's design. And then I got Pokemon Moon because I love Lunala's design. And yeah, since then I've been back in the anime and in the games.
Nice. Okay. Well, it'll be interesting to hear your take then on this movie in particular because it borrows heavily from one of the Gen 4 games, which is Pokemon Platinum, and it actually hadn't released at the time of this movie, so it's very interesting what this presented versus what we got, and also players who maybe played the game first and then watched the movie. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump on into Giratina and the Sky Warrior. The blurb for this reads, Giratina is the sole Pokemon living in the Reverse World, a little-known realm adjacent to our own. Enraged when Palkia and Dialga disrupt time and space, it drags Dialga into the Reverse World for a battle, but the conflict is broken up by a tiny Shaymin, the Gratitude Pokemon. After departing the reverse world and meeting Ash and his friends, Shaymin, communicating telepathically, asks for help so it can be reunited with the other Shaymin in the Gracidia Garden. So, similar to the first movie from Diamond and Pearl, this starts off with some legendaries and a mythical, which is our boy Shaymin, basically. Manny, what'd you think about the introduction here of our green hedgehog friend?
Yeah, so first of all, I love when Pokemon does that, the world of Pokemon intro and just shows off like every single Pokemon they can fit in. I always love those intros, and you always get like the shot of like the NPCs battling it out in the Pokemon League.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we got Brennan's his name, right? From the third gen, and then Lucas. They're battling, and then So that was, I always love when the movies do like that big intro. Like, I guess because it's kind of like a way to hook maybe first time watchers of the anime in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always love that. And then with our introduction, I was a bit confused as to why Giratina like decided to attack Dialga, but later on they do tell us the reasoning. But just going into the reverse world was just amazing. I love the way they designed it, like the look of it and everything like that. And the introduction to Shaymin as well was pretty cool, because you just see it kind of like minding its own business, and you don't know what's gonna happen, and it, as we see, it somehow gets absorbed into the chaos. And so it was definitely a good introduction for me to not only Giratina but Shaymin as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a really cool introduction. What about you, Nox?
I agree with kind of like what you're saying there. That intro, that kind of like classic intro for the Pokemon movies, where it starts off. Like, I absolutely love those intros. Like, the nostalgia bug just kicks in like super hard with that. This also, to me, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the Diamond and Pearl era movies is kind of like almost like an end of an era, if that makes sense, of like Pokemon movies. And then the formula starts to switch up, kind of where we start going into, I mean, you still have like the Gen 5 movies that kind of still follow that formula a little bit with like Mewtwo and whatnot. But to me, it's always been like the Diamond and Pearl was almost like the end of like not really season 1, but like season 1 of the movies of Pokemon movies. But no, I definitely like the intro, kind of setting up also like maybe jumping ahead a little bit, but also kind of jumping to like that classic almost like Pokemon villain of the movies. Like when we meet him, and I'm sure we'll talk about him here in a minute, but like I always like, I don't know, that design always kind of like hooked me a little bit.
Yeah, that was a cool like anime-esque villain design for that character that we'll talk about later. But I also wanted to shout out that the girl with the Eevee family in the intro, that she was like surrounded by Eevee and all its evolutions. I thought it was cool because my boy Umbreon was repped in this movie. And then also we got tree textures. Well, we got amazing tree textures.
We sure did.
People love them tree textures.
It's the most important thing of any Pokemon, anything,
yes.
Movies, games. It's all about the trees. If the trees are bad, the movie, the game, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible at that point.
Yep. Doesn't matter if the story is amazing. We don't care unless there's good tree textures.
So going back to the intro for a sec, I was actually not as big of a fan, at least compared to Rise of Darkrai's intro, because that one had a cool trick to it where it was slowly expanding and showing clips of all the movies. I'm just like, oh, that's really cool. Like, you see Ash, and then slowly along the way, Brock joins, and then Dawn joins. But what I did like about it is that it showed all these environments, like Manny said, the lady with the evolutions, and the battle stadium, and all these other environments. and then it transferred right into the reverse world. It was just like, oh, okay, I get it. It's kind of showing Pokemon that are in all these locations, even in this weird adjacent dimension to our own.
Yeah, and then we get a look of a Professor Elm lookalike.
That's Professor
Wow.
like.
When it sees the Shaymin, and it's like, oh, what's that doing here? So right away, right off the bat, they kind of give you a hint that the Shaymin is like super important. During the battle, you kind of see like the Shaymin absorb smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So when I saw that, I was like, I wonder what that could be about.
The one thing I will say that I miss from like the older Pokemon movies is that kind of like Pikachu special, like at the beginning. Like I kind of wish sometimes they had kept all that going. I know that it'd been like kind of like its own separate little mini movie from it, but I don't know. I've always
the short.
Yeah, little shorts. I've
Yeah.
always been a huge fan of those. And maybe it's just maybe we have a weird taste for that, but like I remember seeing that back with like the Mewtwo Strikes Back and then Pokemon 2000. I don't know, I always had a kind of a weird love for those. It's always been sad like in the future ones they don't really happen anymore.
Yeah, I think those are just like Japan exclusive.
Mhm.
Or like theater exclusive, because this was like right at the period where they stopped airing the movies in theaters for America. Because if I do remember, I think they do still do like the Pikachu specials for current movies as well.
Do they?
So I think it just became like
I'm not to YouTube
because
these.
yeah, there's definitely, I know I've seen like the specials still continue. So I think it was just like because it was no longer theatrical releases here in the US, they kind of took it off.
Oh, that makes sense.
Which is definitely is a bummer, because those shorts were always very fun and awesome to watch.
Plus, you'd also kind of get like hints of like future Pokemon, because I think if I remember correctly, Kid showed up early, Snubbull showed up early, before like the games or anything else, or they were officially announced.
And
Why not was
I
one.
think that was
also.
like the first.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that was also I think like the first introduction to Meryl as well.
Mm-hmm.
In the first short, so you're just like, oh my god, what are these Pokemon?
The infamous
like,
Pika
Are we
Blue.
gonna see them? Yeah, I remember that.
And here, Shaymin is gonna remember something for the rest of the movie, which is in its mind that it's about to be eaten by Giratina, which causes it to make a seed flare attack and literally rips a hole in time and space. And this lets Dialga escape from the reverse world, and then Shaymin also kind of just gets flung back to reality.
Okay, so Will, so Metal Bomb was a strike
Magnet
for me.
Bomb?
I don't remember there's Magnet Bomb. Yeah, there you go. I know there was another move that was a strike for me. Is Seed Flare still available?
Well,
in the current
that's a great
gens?
question, because
I was actually looking
Shaymin
that up.
isn't in Galar, so it's the only Pokemon.
Doesn't matter about Shaymin. I'm just it's just that it's exclusive
Yeah,
move.
it's a signature move.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then. I'm not teaching another Pokemon Seed Flare. There's 3 strikes. I'm out.
That's coming to Arceus, so there you go.
Oh, that's true. There's hope then.
And then the next thing that we see there is Dialga use one of its many powers, presumably, to lock Giratina in the time loop. So it's trapped. Like, this works very effectively, actually.
That was a pretty cool, like little, I guess you could say like little nudge.
Mm-hmm.
Because you kind of like, you're like, oh, it's going to get out. Like, it's going to keep following it. And then it gets knocked into a field. And then that's when Professor Elm is like, oh, it got stuck in an infinite time loop.
Okay. Before we confuse people.
Professor Newton.
Yes. Well, Professor Newton Graceland is this character's name, and he's got his little shield on with him.
Yeah, a really cool shield on.
So,
and his little like mechanical arm.
Mm-hmm. The backpack arm, basically.
Yeah. So when I first I went back and rewatched this movie, I watched it with my wife, and so she's never seen this movie before. And I will start off this podcast by saying her first introduction was Shaymin, And she's had Shaymin before in the games, but like Shaymin in the movies, it was like she loved it. She thought it was adorable. She thought it was cute. She loved every bit of it. And then it progresses on here in like 10 minutes ish, 15 minutes into the movie. Her opinion starts to change kind of quick.
You know what? I do not blame her. And I think that's a perfect segue into talking about the Sky Warrior of this movie, who is Shaymin. And what's interesting is this first intro sequence we see through a character named Zero, which we'll talk about in a sec. But Shaymin is pretty much silent this whole time until later down the road where he meets our main protagonist and, as the blurb says, talks telepathically with them. What were your thoughts on Shaymin as the movie progressed, Manny?
First things first was, oh look, another Pokemon that can telepathically speak to humans without being psychic type whatsoever. But yeah, my first thought, because again, this was like my first time actually watching it through. I thought that this was gonna be like a royal Shaymin.
Oh.
Just because of like as Nox kind of pointed out, like her personality seemed kind of like, oh, I am greater than thou. Do not speak to me, peasant. So yeah, I thought I was like, oh, okay, so this is gonna be like a royal Shaymin. It probably got lost, but I honestly didn't mind the way that her attitude was portrayed. Though for me, it kind of felt kind of weird because I watched the entire movie in the Japanese version because I figured if I watched it in English, I was not going to be able to stand Ash's voice actor for an entire movie. So I watched the Japanese version and the voice kind of felt a bit off, like it didn't belong. And just like simple phrases kind of felt random. Like even the way she would say like, oh, like that Pokemon wants to eat me. Like it felt like it didn't fit that character. So I don't know if in the English version it felt kind of forced, like the way that Shaymin was portrayed, but in the Japanese version it definitely felt a bit forced.
I will say in like the English version, the voice actors or actress that plays Shaymin, like if the voice, at least in my opinion, kind of fits Shaymin. But yeah, no, I would definitely say like those lines kind of fit a little bit better with her voice in the English version. So I know what you're talking about. I've watched the Japanese one as well, and it's a bit off.
Yeah, okay. So it wasn't just me. That's good to hear.
So I didn't think about this for years, but you kept saying she, so in your mind was Shaymin the girl?
Yeah, she sounded just like a female.
Mm-hmm. I kind of put it that way because of the voice that you heard.
Which is why like the whole in my head like Shaymin being royalty kind of fit well with me because it was kind of like a princess. Would be a bit more snobbier than a prince.
Princess is the perfect word.
Yeah, so that's why for me it was, and then yeah, because in again definitely sounded like a female.
It was funny. My wife, as we watched this, like I was saying, so like she loved Shaymin all the way up until Shaymin started talking telepathically, and then she was like, "It was so much cuter before it started talking."
That is an interesting question. Do you think this movie could have had a different execution to it if Shaymin did not talk?
No, I think actually Shaymin talking was kind of needed for this movie. Kind of like you were saying though, like oh, it's another telepathic talking Pokemon. Speaking of that, I think it's funny that Mew is like the only one we haven't heard in a mythical format. That's it's like,
I mean, even Pikachu spoke.
Right? He spoke. I think he's been like 2 or 3 times now. We've heard Pikachu speak in the anime.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. I think Shaymin, it kind of fit the story, because we got a better understanding of like, oh, it's trying to eat me, like, kind of those, its mindset of the situation. It was funny though, because like I remember, like even me, like the first time I watched this, like I wasn't expecting Shaymin to kind of be like you said, kind of like this high royal, like I'm better than all thou in front of me, bow before my flowery beauty type. But I think it did fit.
Oh,
Yeah, and for me, when it comes to the movies, I definitely excuse that they can talk, because I feel like if an entire movie without that Pokemon talking and telling us like the reasoning it's there kind of feels like the movie wouldn't be as enjoyable.
I think the best. Go
And
ahead. Sorry.
no, that was pretty
I was
much.
gonna say I think the best movie they did that in is the recent Dada Zarude movie, just
Yeah.
because it's only to Coco. He's the only one
Hmm.
that can hear it because he's speaking the Zarude language. I
Yeah.
think they did that one well in that movie. I think out of all the but and Mewtwo as well, because I mean it's Mewtwo. Kind of makes sense for that one. But yeah,
my question is, are all Shaymin like this one in terms of their personality? Or is this unique to our
No,
main
I
Shaymin
think,
here?
yeah, I think it was just the uniqueness of it. That I did like it though, because I forgot what it's known as the gratitude Pokemon,
Mhm,
right?
it
Correct.
is.
Yeah, so I always like the trope where it's like they're given this title, but their personality is the exact opposite of that title that they're given. So I feel like this definitely added character to the shaman. But I think every other shaman probably has its different personality, because like we've seen in the anime, Pokemon definitely have different personalities, even if they're from the same
Oh,
species.
like Dragonite, a good example. Like Dragonite
Yeah,
currently in Journeys, there's just the Dragonite in the Black and White series. Like
yeah.
completely different personalities.
Manny, what did you think about the title of the movie before and after the reveal of what Shaymin can do?
So I already knew what it could
Okay.
do, because again, like I watched bits and pieces of when it premiered on Cartoon Network. Cause I remember it was like a Saturday night,
Hmm.
and I was I think I was on my Game Boy, and my brother was the one who was watching the movie mostly. So I did remember seeing that form, and also I know of it because there's a meme that's like, oh, Shaman was a written off starter, because it says like the first evolution was Shaman, and then Skyform is the second evolution, and the final form is Virizion.
Oh my god.
Um, yeah, so that's how I kind of remembered about the Skyform. So yeah, but I definitely didn't know like what the catalyst or like the conditioning it of how Shaman got that Skyform. So it was cool to see when later on when they introduced how Shaman gets its Skyform.
Got it. Okay, cool. I wasn't sure, but I'm very curious how many people first experienced this movie and were like, "What the heck is the Sky Warrior?" Because if you don't know Shaman,
Yeah,
that's kind of a reveal here.
yeah. It's also like how many people watched the trailer, how many
Hmm.
didn't. So because I think the trailer kind of gives it away. Um, but I didn't watch the trailers at all, so I kind of I think figured it out. That's what it was, just because they say its name.
Right.
But I don't remember how the transformation went until recently watching this.
Its whole thing is pretty unique in the fact that it can transform with just being in the presence of Gracidia flowers. The movie does a very zoomed in animation to show you it's the pollen basically coming from the flowers.
That was neat. I think that was one of the like my favorite scenes from this movie is seeing that, like that's the reason why it does its form change.
Hmm.
Like that one scene when they're on the train, I think is probably one of my favorite shots in this movie.
Same. I like that they try to make it more grounded and not like, oh, it's magical that they do this. Like, no, it looks very specifically like it's the pollen from this flower that triggers this transformation here. Um, and yeah,
Is this
mhm,
the same in the games?
yes,
Yes.
The Skyform? Yes. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
you need the flower. That's why I was actually, as you were talking about that, I was thinking, it's like I really can't wait to see how they do this in Legends Arceus with like when you get the shaman, like are you gonna like run into like this field and all of a sudden you see your shaman behind you like change?
Mhm.
Like I'm really curious, or if it's just gonna be like every other Pokemon game where you give the item and it changes over.
So The interesting thing about Skyform is that it's kind of like Mega Evolutions in a way, where you have to have certain criteria and then it just goes back, very much like the games. So pretty much every game that has had Shaymin in it also has Gracidia as a feature in it, or like as an item,
And
basically.
That's a good
So,
way to think
what
about
are
that.
the like the conditions?
well, it has to be daytime, and you just have to. It's basically just a key item that you show to Shaymin, and it transforms. Uh, but other reasons that it goes back is if you put it back in the PC, or if it gets afflicted by the freeze status.
Okay, that's very well. It would make sense, right? Because it's not warm, I guess, in a sense, since it uses sunlight only to be able to be in that form. So it's kind of like when flowers, when it's cold, they go to sleep,
Yeah, that's a good way of
and
thinking
then
of it. Yeah.
when the daytime comes, they open up and bloom again. That's really cool.
I do like
And
how you said that it's basically like a mega evolution, because then it made me start thinking about like Shaymin and then even Hoopa. Like it really does kind of feel like a mega evolution style vibe, because it goes to that form and then reverts back.
right. And it's very much about being in the party that has this transformation. Like with Rotom, you
Mm-hmm.
can put it in a microwave or a fridge, and it stays like that, even if you put it in the PC. But Shaman's is very much about being out in the open to have this form. And uh, that's probably something, Manny, that I'm guessing you didn't pick up on since you haven't played with a shaman in most of the games, I'm guessing, is that all those indicators that transform shaman back into landform pretty much happen throughout this movie.
Yeah, it was definitely a great exposition to give to people that might not know the Pokemon.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of love when there's conditionings for the forms, because it's like this isn't a permanent thing. There's a condition to it. Like yes, Shaman gets great power, but there's also a consequence to that power, and that's that it needs to
Mhm.
be
With great
in
power
sunlight in order. Yeah,
comes great
comes great
responsibility.
responsibility. Yes. But our introduction to the Shaman and our characters is a completely soot covered Shaman sneaking in to breakfast to eat pancakes.
Yeah, so this is the meeting between Shaman and our heroes, and I'm guessing this is the turning point also for your wife, Nox.
It was definitely the turning point. Like as soon as that scene happened, literally, we were watching it, and she's like I said, at the beginning, she's like, "Oh, it's so cute." Like she really, really liked Shaman.
Mm-hmm.
And then like the breakfast scene essentially happened, and Shaman started talking, and then the princess side of Shaman started to come out, and she's like, "I don't like Shaman anymore."
Understandable.
And then she
Uh,
was later on. She was like, it announces like, I think Nurse Joy is the first one that says like that Shaman's the gratitude Pokemon,
mm-hmm.
and my wife was like, "That thing's the gratitude Pokemon." It's like, yes. She's like, okay, that is not the gratitude Pokemon.
And again, it's going back to Manny's favorite, or one of the trips that Manny enjoys is like the contrast between what you expect versus what you actually get here. And I don't I don't know if I enjoy that myself as much. Uh Especially since we don't get a ton of backstory on Shaman. Like, this is, as far as we know, just a completely random Shaman that caught up in all this. And that's why I could maybe see why Manny was going in the direction of, hey, maybe it's royalty, maybe it's like a special Shaman that we're going to find out about later. But we never really get there. Uh,
And that's another thing too. Like speaking of that, so like my wife, like I said, she likes Pokemon. She's not like as crazy as I am about it, but like she knows like what a mythical Pokemon is, right? So when we got to the Nurse Joy scene, and Nurse Joy is like just spitting out facts left and right about Shaymin, she looks at me, she's like, "I thought this thing was a mythical Pokemon, like Mew," and I was like, "It is a mythical Pokemon." She's like, "How do they know so much about it then? Like everyone knows everything about Shaymin." And I was sitting there, and I was like, she's kind of right.
Yeah, and it's like one of those movie tropes where they kind of excuse it, because I think in the anime, like, they still don't know anything about Mew, and that's what makes it very interesting. But like when it comes to the movies, like, everybody knows
Oh yeah.
pretty much everything about the Pokemon. But I definitely liked the like back and forth between Shaymin and Ash. It was definitely an enjoyable part of the movie. I don't know what it is with Pokemon that they just have an obsession with Ash's head. But it definitely was an enjoyable part of the whole movie, like the back and forth with Ash and Shaymin. And if this was in the anime, this would definitely be a Pokemon that would be in Ash's team, because Ash always gets like the misfit Pokemon.
Oh, this would definitely fit like an Ash's team very easily.
Yeah.
Was not a fan of that relationship, actually. Because, especially as we see later on, suddenly Ash...
Were you bullied as a kid, Will?
What was that?
Did people bully you? Were you bullied as a kid, Will? Is that why?
Hey, don't bring this up. Wrong podcast. I just didn't feel like there was a core development there, especially by the time Dawn kind of just says to Ash, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have to say goodbye to Shaymin," as they're like watching it fly around, and Ash gets kind of melancholy. I just did not buy that. I was like, you have no like, there's nothing there that was a neutral situation or like a pivot point for how you interact with this random Pokemon who's not treated you well at all.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but for me that was just like typical Ash, because Ash always puts on like that brave face when it comes to like releasing Pokemon and saying goodbye to Pokemon, where it's like, "Oh, I'm not crying, like I don't want you anyway," like just pretty much in denial, just so that it could spare the Pokemon's feelings and himself. So for me, I did kind of feel like that bond became a thing. I can see where for you it didn't. But I'm definitely like interested in your opinion, Knox. Like, did you feel there was like a bond that was made, or were you like Will when that part happened and you were just like, "Nah, I don't feel that connection"?
So with the bond in regards to like Shaymin, I'm kind of like I'm like right in the middle. So I understand like it kind of goes into like the movie trope kind of thing where they kind of just did Ash's his typical thing, like when he, like you say, like when he releases a Pokemon. But the thing is though too, I think we didn't have that enough time. I mean, it's what, an hour and a half movie, so like we don't have that long period of time where we're seeing that growth between when the Pokemon doesn't really like Ash, but Ash kind of like just tags it along to where it ends up. Or like he had with Charizard. Froakie, he didn't really have, if I remember correctly, Froakie didn't really not like Ash, but it kind of in that same thing when he lets Greninja go later on.
Yeah,
I think that's the issue. Is just like I said, we just didn't have enough time, I guess you could say, compared to like a full length like anime season. But I don't think it was terrible. If it's Ash, like the Ash that I know every time he releases a Pokemon, even though he didn't release it.
Maybe it could also be the English version, because the language felt like they were just fighting all the time, and there wasn't like a sympathetic moment.
well, yeah, but you can kind of like see that as well as like with Ash and Misty, they always fought, and there was still like that bond that was developed. Though they didn't take as long on a journey as Ash and Misty.
Well, the thing with
Um,
Shaymin is though it doesn't even really regard anyone else. Like from the moment it dismisses Ash, it dismisses Dawn and Brock, and kind of just plays them emotionally to serve itself. And like, I want to get here, and I I'll act like high and mighty because I'm cute and I can get away with it, which is very different from maybe what Ash has had with other human companions.
So I think what ends up happening is like Ash like kind of builds like this almost like sibling rivalry bond with Shaymin in a way, where like the siblings like annoying the living crud out of you. But then what ends up happening is, you still love your sibling, but the sibling still annoys you. But let's say now you're going off to college and your sibling is still staying home, and then you're gonna miss the annoyance. Kind of like that, maybe being built between Shaymin and Ash.
yeah, I see that. Yeah. And so we see like Nurse Joy kind of tells us why Shaman was probably left alone. That this migration period is happening, and Shaman, being Shaman, was hungry and wanted more pancakes, but Dawn offers her or it a puffin and does not like the puffin whatsoever.
Right, and going back to like the whole reveal here about like, oh, Shaman's going on a migration, um, and it's trying to get to this garden. That felt a little weird to me because you don't really see it get separated from other Shaman when it's with Dialga and Giratina. So, are we assuming it was already separated before?
I think so, because then we're gonna go into like I guess you could say like the quote unquote mythical aspect of it, where like
Mhm.
everyone knows like all the shaman gather here every year, but there's very few of them potentially, and they're just like spread out throughout the Pokemon world, and then they all come back together for this event.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Well, that brings it up the good question again that you mentioned about your wife, Nox, is that like people here seem to know a lot more about Shaman than what you would assume is the norm for a mythical Pokemon. So, in each of your eyes, how many Shaman are there in the world?
We saw there was like multiple
Right.
toward like jumping ahead towards the end. Um, I'd like to think just in Sinnoh that's where Shaman is confined.
I agree with that.
Um, I think anime wise because in Kalos we kind of see like Zapdos and Moltres are there.
Hmm.
So I guess you can say that those are specifically living in the Kalos region, while the others are in Kanto. Um, so yeah, for me, I think Shaman is just solely living in the Sinnoh region, and just in vast multiple parts throughout the entire region.
I could definitely see that. I feel like there's not that many shaman, and kind of like tying to like other movies, like in the Zarude movie, um, how there's like that just like a
Mm.
little tribe of Zarude. There's not like an absorbent amount of them. I'd say like, and I mean I can't put a number on it, but I'd say like if I did, like probably definitely under 100. Just thinking about to like the ending scene. Um, Not like a ton, and kind of like we're like you just bringing up like the legendaries. Like there's some in Kalos, there's some in Kanto, and I think it's sort of too like people don't understand with like legendaries. Besides like certain ones, like well, technically there's two Mewtwo's if you want to be.
Yeah, that's a different
I would
Mewtwo.
say if you want to be technically canonically accurate, there's actually two Mewtwo's, but for the most part, like there in regards to the legendaries, most of the time there are more than one.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's hard to stretch that, but like with like Rayquaza, Groudon, Kyogre, and like kind of like almost like the Gen 3 and some of 4, like in Regigigas. Like there's a few legendaries that's hard to explain that. Um but I would say that uh in regards to like legendaries and mythicals. Like there's more legendaries than there are mythicals, and then mythicals there's even less than the legendary Pokemon.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. How many Darkrai would you say there are then?
I'd
Are
say
there more
probably around,
Darkrai than Shaymin?
probably about the same, because it would still fall in that same category where if you go in like scientifically, if we're going to like categorize that, then yeah, like I would say Darkrai kind of falls in that Shaymin category. Should the Shaymin, maybe the Mew category, like where there's much fewer of a mythical, and what classifies it as a mythical besides marketing reasons.
Mhm.
And then when it comes to like legendaries, there are more legendaries than there are mythicals. Of that, like I feel like a 1-to-1 species comparison.
Interesting. Okay. Because my answer to the original question was going to be there's thousands of Shaymin.
Oh,
And here's why I think this. If there was like a incredibly small amount of Shaymin, there would be way more people at this garden to watch this happen because they're already known for being the gratitude Pokemon. They have a flower that's kind of mirrored off of them that people give in like commonly, which we'll talk about later because it happens at a certain point in the movie that people just give these flowers to others as special bouquets expressing gratitude. So if there aren't a ton of people at this one spot, there has to be a lot other gardens like this where people are growing these flowers for themselves or just because it's the natural habitat of the Shaymin. And because of that influx of environments for them, there's more Shaymin. So that's why, like, I don't know if that changes your perspective on it, but to me, that's kind of the assumption I had coming in and saying, like, oh, this isn't like the most guarded, like, very exclusive area because it's not surrounded by tourists, especially during this event.
Yeah, and I guess we can say that they chose to go to that specific location because it was the closest one to them.
Right.
And it does make sense because it kind of bugged me that nobody was there to witness this. Like they spoke highly about it, and I was like, "Ooh, it's probably gonna be like a nice festival. The people are gonna like come together like during the climax of like this whole like, oh no, like what's gonna happen to the town." I thought they were gonna be there and do their best to like help out for the Shaymin, and nobody was there. Like
Right.
literally nobody. They were all like in their houses
On the train, on the boat.
yeah.
it was like
I was like, where are the people at?
it's like when you see birds migrating, and then it's kind of like the same thing. Like, oh, it's just,
Yeah, it's just like-
some birds are passing.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Exactly. But anyway, going back to the movie, we haven't really talked about this Pokemon too much because our hedgehog kind of stole the spotlight. But what are your guys' thoughts on Giratina and seeing it in the reverse world versus the unreverse or the real world, as people call it here? Nox.
My Edgy's 2009 kid loved Giratina so much. So
Mhm.
much. I still love
Yeah.
Giratina. I think they did the distortion world really well. Like you said, this is kind of before we saw, which I didn't even think about that. Think about it now, years later, that we saw the distortion world here technically before we saw it in the games. But I think they did the distortion world English is really well. I think I don't know. Like I didn't really have any nitpicks with Giratina. Like I think Giratina was done like really well, in my opinion.
Yeah, because I like that right off the bat they tell you it's not the villain of the movie. It's like, oh, Giratina's upset at what Dialga and Palkia did, and is trying to right that wrong. So it definitely was like a great, because I feel like if they followed the same trope as Darkrai, it would be too repetitive. Where the townspeople assumed Darkrai was the whole like villain behind it. So I feel like people would have complained with that trope. So I like that right off the bat, there's like, oh, he's just upset. It's just upset. And like with Nox as well, I love Giratina. Anything that is like dark type or ghost type, I love. And just in general as well. And I think it's all thanks to the legendary Undertaker from WWE.
Of course.
Which is like, yeah, it was just like growing up. That wrestler was my favorite, and
he was mine too.
Yeah, I do credit like my love of like when it comes to Death Note, Ryuk is my favorite character. I love like anything Day of the Dead.
You are a man of
anything
taste.
that's like, yeah, pretty much like spooky and doesn't fit the mold. All thanks to that character. So that wrestler is the reason why I love anything that's dark type or ghost type. So just like with Steph, I love Darkrai. Darkrai is one of my favorite mythicals. I used it a lot in Pokken. Definitely a good fighter to use in Pokken.
Yes, I second this.
Yeah, you see? And I love Giratina as well. And it's shiny. It's shiny is so good.
I would say that, like, I think Giratina shiny. Actually, all of the, like, Giratina, Dialga, and Palkia, all of, like, phenomenal shinies. But Giratina is the better of the three. Like, it's so different. Whereas, like, Dialga and Palkia is still slightly similar to the original, but Giratina's was such like a palette swap almost that it worked really well.
Yeah. So what about you, Will? Like, what were the first time you were introduced to Giratina? What were like your thoughts on that
So
Pokemon?
I actually encountered Giratina in the games first because
yeah, I know this story. I heard it on the podcast, but definitely tell Nox.
oh, did you?
Oh no, wait, that wasn't it. No, that was Darkrai, right? Never mind. Never mind. You see,
I was like,
oh wait, wrong Pokemon. Yeah, never mind. Continue. Will.
Sure. So I don't know how many people know, because it surprised me as a kid, is that you can actually find Giratina in Diamond and Pearl.
Oh yeah, in Turnback Cave.
Yes. It's just this cave that's kind of out of the way, and I just stumbled upon it, and I'm like, what the heck is this? Because I just run into this humongous Pokemon that, like, has no explanation. It's just kind of there. And then I saw the trailer for the movie. I'm like, oh, it's that thing that, like, none of my friends know about. Just me. And seeing it in this form also gave me more intrigue. I'm like, what the heck is all this about? So I really enjoy them displaying the practicality of Giratina, where if it's in the reverse world, it will look more like a snake, while if it's in the real world, it'll actually grow legs to walk around, because gravity isn't all over the place like we see explicitly said in the reverse world. So I thought that was cool. Though I do wonder if there's a strong connection between Shaymin and Giratina being the pair that kind of are the spotlight of this movie. Because I have one theory as to why, but other than that, it feels kind of loose.
They made it feel that way slightly with the way Seed Flare worked in the distortion world, and Seed Flare essentially being able to create a ripple and a hole out of nowhere. I remember first time I saw this movie, like, you know, I was kind of blown away. I was like, what is going on?
And I think they do kind of allude to it. It's the fact that if it sucks up the toxic clouds in that world is when it can do it. But as a kid, I missed that, and I was also like, "Oh, can it just anytime it uses Seed Flare, it just causes portals to open?" But I picked up on that more this time for the review.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was a bit more obvious, because like for me there isn't that connection. Whereas like I see Cresselia and Darkrai, and I know immediately those are a pair. Palkia and Dialga immediately, not just because they're the legendaries, but they just have, you know, space and time, so that's the pair. So yeah, for me, definitely Giratina and Shaymin isn't two Pokemon that I would have linked together. And as you were like asking that question, I was definitely thinking like, what is Giratina linked to?
Mm-hmm.
Arceus would
So
be
definitely,
kind of the thing I would
yeah,
say.
I think that would probably make it. I think was the more outstanding one because it's like God and the devil, as they
Mm.
like to call Giratina because it's in the reverse world or the and obviously Arceus being the god of all Pokemon. So that's for me that's a more relatable because it's opposites like yin and yang, just like how space and time are the opposite. Um, Arceus and Giratina are opposites of each other, and Cresselia and Darkrai are opposites of each other, in a sense. But I do like how like in the in its snake form, like its wings look like a cape as it's flying by. Um, I thought that was like a really cool
Uh,
little design.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Right, like they're wings, but they're kind of more like decorations in a way.
Yeah, it looks like a cape. There was like this one scene where it's
Mhm.
flying. I was like, oh, it looks just like a cape.
Right. To me, it kind of seemed like draping pieces of clothing
Yeah,
almost. Which,
yeah, like tattered.
yes, yeah, exactly. It gives it that kind of gothic feel.
So yeah, it was like a Dementor from Harry Potter,
And
The way
that
that
just
kind
tattered up.
the way they played in the games too, though, like it feels even different though. Like in the games, like his
mm,
origin form,
mm-hmm,
like because the way I saw the arms, like thinking back to like Platinum. So like when Giratina pops out of the center hole up in Spirit Pillar,
mm-hmm.
and you see like the oh no, this is wings that pop out. Never mind. I just thought about that. It's not the origin form that pops out. It's wings.
Oh, so it's the altered form.
Yeah, it's the altered form. No, my bad. I actually started thinking about that as I was saying it. No, it's his altered form. Okay, never mind. Take back what I
All good, yeah.
said.
So the main form is this one that we see in the distortion world.
His
Correct.
origin form. Yeah.
That's called its origin form.
Okay, that's okay because I never knew like which one was like the main one. So I would always confuse those forms together. I always thought the origin was Giratina with its legs. So now that I know,
Mhm.
even in the movie, I think I forgot that they specifically tell you its form.
Right, because it comes out and it's very explicit, like, oh, this is why Giratina looks different here, which is a neat touch. And also, I feel like that's the only reason they're linked together, is that both Shaymin and Giratina have different forms.
Huh.
Doesn't Arceus have a different form?
No. Not
No,
not yet at least.
it
Oh,
changes type, but
Oh,
that's kind of
jeez.
it.
I was. Oh, okay. That's probably what it
Mhm.
was.
And we will see Arceus in a later movie, but as far as this one goes, I feel like that's the strongest connection that they have.
Mm. I still feel like it's more connected to Arceus just because of like the whole
Yeah.
yin and yang aspect. But I do see your point. Like, oh, these are two forms.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying it's a
Um,
good connection for sure. It's just like
no,
they're like,
yeah,
How do we make these parallel to each other?" It's like, oh, they have different forms, which is fine. Like, I guess that is the selling point for Platinum, is the fact that you can get both forms of these in there, and the way that you get Origin form and can battle with it in the real world is by having Giratina hold onto the Grisius orb. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, that will change its ability and its stats. So if you want to use Origin versus Altered, you have the choice of doing that in Platinum. And Nox, do you remember, is the Gracia flower in Diamond and Pearl, or is that just Platinum?
it is just platinum. So
Just
that's
Platinum.
like when people were seeing the early trailers for like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl in Floroma Town, when you see that
Mhm.
one NPC, it's the girl how to explain it? It's like she's like in front of the like flower shop, the house
Right.
there. She's exclusive to platinum, and she's the one who gives you the Grisidea flower that can
Got it.
change Shaymin from its two forms.
Right. Okay. Good to know. Yeah. And kind of going back to the movie a bit as well. because we've talked a ton about the Pokemon, but there is a human villain, and given it,
with the best name ever, man.
you like the name?
Completely agree. Yes.
Yes, when I heard the name, I was like, "Oh, Mega Man Zero!" Right off the bat. I was like, "Yes."
So, Manny, what are your thoughts on Zero?
I like him. I like his character design. I kind of wish we understood more of his purpose for wanting to release it, because you get a sense, but you don't kind of like with Shaymin, you don't really know his origin. It's like, oh, he wants to kind of like absorb Giratina's powers, but it's like, why? Like, what was the cause of it? What clicked in his head to like for him to go kind of mad? Or was he always a little like wrong in the head? Was he always I guess you could say evil? Or did something like happen where taking a lot of time in the distortion world, kind of something clicked for him and it's like, oh, like this is my grand purpose?
Right. So Zero is actually the first person we meet in this movie besides Shaymin, because
and his AI.
Yes, exactly. He's talking with his AI in the beginning of the movie as he watches Dialga and Giratina fight, and kind of narrates and explains a lot to us. But it feels like it's way later on that we actually get any info on who he is. All we know is he has a cool hover bike and
awesome hair.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes.
That's one word to describe it for sure.
I told you. It's the anime hair.
Definitely
Very anime.
I hate to say it, the first
I
time I
wonder
saw
how
it,
many like
Yu-Gi-Oh hair is the way I first saw it.
Yes, you see, there we go.
It is.
Bakura. He was Bakura.
And Magnezone and a bunch of Magnemite, and is like, I want to capture this Shaymin because it's going to be my way into the distortion world. So
we get like a little bit of a backstory with him and Newton, but it's
correct, because he has a video recording that he just kind of watches, like with his AI, and we're like, oh, these two humans know each other. Newton, who's in the reverse world as we saw before, and Zero, who's just kind of in our world watching everything.
So I will say this real quick. I noticed it at this time around watching it again. Like, is it just me, or is his AI literally just the Nurse Joy from Mewtwo Strikes Back? When Mewtwo takes over, Nurse Joy's mine. And I was like, is that really
The
same hair
design.
loopies?
I saw that too.
Yeah, it definitely reminded me of a Nurse Joy. And also, we didn't mention this because like I kind of forgot because we just were talking about Shaymin. But I like that this Nurse Joy like was different than the rest because she had glasses on.
Right. She was.
So that was like a subtle thing that I appreciated because we're used to like the whole like trope of just Nurse Joy looking exactly alike.
Right.
And in the anime, we get a sense of different Joys with different personalities because we get like the emo Joy, who blames herself because the cycling road was built and is taking away her clientele, and then we get those too many little Joys that were super annoying. Because little kids are annoying,
Right.
but also I think I don't know if it started in Sinnoh, but I've noticed that in each town they've been to, the Nurse Joy's cross is a different color.
Yep. And also
And that's a
for
little
Officer Jenny, they have a different symbol.
Yeah, and that's okay. I haven't noticed the Officer Jenny ones, but it's a little subtle thing that I appreciate because we're so used to seeing the same face. So I like when they add different things to kind of show that it's not just Pokemon, because Nurse Joy is a Pokemon. That's my
Oh, you saw the
Joy's
game
just
theory
Weirdo.
about that?
yes, that's my headcanon. Nurse Joy is a Pokemon. There's no way they all look alike. First, it was their first. My first theory was it's a cult, and they all have them dye their hair pink. But now it's a Pokemon. Nurse Joy and Officer Jenny's are all Pokemon.
Why not both?
They showed multiple Shaymins. There's multiple Jennies. There's multiple Joys. I just asked Brock because Brock has a picture of the Joys in their family reunion. So that's my headcanon now. Nurse
right.
Joys and Nurse Jenny's are Pokemon.
Has been
That
your
family
PSA.
reunion, that family reunion picture, I know what you're talking about, has always thrown me off. I was just like, oh wow, so they actually get. Oh, okay. Oh, that's confusing.
That must be a nightmare for the waiters at that restaurant. Like which one ordered what? They're all the same.
Yeah, and then just imagine like checking in at a hotel.
Yeah.
It's like, you just checked in. It's like, no, that was my cousin Jenny. I'm Jenny.
So Zero again. Zero kind of defines a lot of my overall issues with this movie, which are that there isn't a lot of substance. And that might also be the way that the story is portrayed, where it feels like we're just moving beat to beat. There isn't like necessarily a lot of parallel things happening at once, or a lot of like horizontal movement is just kind of straightforward a lot of the time. And I think if you'd seen more of that space between moments and events, I would have appreciated and maybe bought that there was a bond between Ash and Shaymin more, and also motivation behind Zero, more about the relationship between him and Professor Newton. But a lot of it kind of just feels empty in a way that left me being like, I like it, but I want to get more from it. Like it feels like there's a lot that they could have explored that was just left on the table.
I can definitely see what you're talking about. Like, I feel like they should have started the movie off with Professor Newton and Zero. So, like, have a scene at the beginning, kind of like, I'm not trying to go back to Gen 1, but like in Mewtwo Strikes Back, where they have that scene start off with oh Lord, the scientist, I forget his name, at the lab
Fuji?
yeah, Fuji, thank you. Where they're creating Mewtwo and explodes and everything. Like, kind of have like that origin scene for explaining Zero,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it would have fleshed Zero out a bit more. That made him more of a likable, like, villain type character. Whereas
Yeah.
we just went straight into Shaymin and Dialga
Right.
and Giratina, and we didn't understand, and then Zero starts showing up, and we're like, what? Why do we have Yu-Gi-Oh characters appearing with nursery AIs? Okay, I mean,
Is he from the reverse world? What's going on?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it would have been cool if we got an introduction to him and kind of see him like break down, and then something happens and you're left wondering like the fate of Zero, and to be introduced to him again. But I think if he was like under a mask, that way you're left wondering like, oh, who is this? And then like once the whole reveal to the main characters, I feel like it would have been more. It would have added more depth. It's like, oh, I thought you were gone. It's like, no, I've been here the whole time, Sensei. So yeah, I definitely feel like they could have added, because yeah, you're left wondering like, oh, okay, so what's his plan? And then you find out what it is, but you're still like, okay, but what got him to that point?
Right.
like maybe he lost a
So he
Pokemon or
definitely-
something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I completely forgot about this character throughout the movie, and especially because he plays an important part during the end.
Right.
So there's a point where like you kind of forget about him, and I was like, oh, okay, the movie's ending, and then he comes back. Like, oh, you're still here.
Right.
Yeah, so he didn't feel fleshed out, even though he has the coolest name ever. They could have done a better job with him.
Definitely. Also, just to make sure we stay on time here, let's jump into that ending sequence where we get to like the highest stake point in the movie, probably, which isn't saying too much overall, since I think that's part of my thing as well. There wasn't a ton of very high action or high stake moments for me, but this is where Zero has basically taken Giratina's powers, or at least a copy of them, and is now trying to wreak havoc on the real world by destroying the reverse world equivalent. So in this case, breaking through the pillars that are the foundation of an iceberg, basically, or what? Well, a glacier actually. That's now going to crush the flowers and crush a town if he's able to knock it all through. What do you guys think about this being the climax of the movie in a sense?
I would say that.
For,
Go ahead.
go ahead, man.
Yeah. I was gonna say that it's like when it comes to the climax of the movie, like my favorite part, honestly, was just like Regigigas showing up.
Mm.
Like, like that was honestly like my favorite part of the ending of the movie was like so Regigigas shows up. I also discovered that Furt learns Ice Beam. I did not know that. Threw me off. So like they have all the Pokemon line up and they're shooting the Ice Beam at the glacier and having Regigigas stop it. And like you see Furt and Centret show up shooting the Ice Beams, and my mind just couldn't register that, and I actually went to Smoggen to check like during the movie, and I was like, okay,
Yep, the power of normal types.
accurate. Okay then. But I don't know. Like the ending of the movie was honestly, was not my favorite when it comes to like Pokemon movies. It was okay. It was not the greatest. Like I said, it was just Regigigas to me. It was like, oh sweet, get to see Regigigas.
Right. And all these Mamoswine are like, oh shoot,
Oh yeah.
they're all coming together here. I will say I enjoy the fact that they're finally capitalizing on the fact that the reverse world and the real world are connected.
So yeah, like I said, I liked that they kind of said like these two worlds are connected, and what affects one world affects the other. Like we see with like the smoke clouds, that are affecting the reverse world, and also as well, like if you pop a bubble, it affects the real world. So I liked that they kept that connected. And then when it came to the Regigigas reveal, I was like, wait a minute. Are you telling me that not only do they have to fight a glacier, but now they're going to have to fight a Regigigas that is sitting there for no reason whatsoever? Because, why not? Let's just have a Regigigas there. So yeah, I was definitely surprised that it helped out. The Mamoswine running down the iceberg reminded me of the Lion King when Simba sees the wildebeest running down the cliff.
I can never unsee that now. Oh God, thank you.
Like if you look at it, it looked. I don't know if they copied it exactly, but it definitely like brought me flashbacks. So I was like, oh, they're paying tribute to the Lion King. But it was cool to see like that it wasn't what I initially thought, and Regigigas went there to save not just the Pokemon but the townspeople. And yeah, again, like I said, this battle was just like I completely forgot that Zero existed. I thought that was like the last time we saw of him. His ship reminds me of Kartana, the Ultra Beast. So yeah, we get like this thing where it's like, oh, okay, it's done. Like everything's fine. They stop the iceberg. Yay! Like the Shaymin are gonna come out right now. The movie's gonna end, and no, he comes back. I was like, why are you still here? And so we see Ash get into like the hoverboard, and he goes into the reverse world.
Okay, that freaking hoverboard thing was the most like explicit plot device that we need, because Zero literally gets off it at one point and you see him just jump like 50 feet in the air to climb onto the ship again and like ride next to Giratina. And that's the only way that Newton, Ash, and Dawn are able to like get up to the ship, which I was like, really? Like, that's actually something that I think better describes what my frustration is with the movie, is that there aren't a lot of surprises besides Regigigas, which I was like, okay, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, I could definitely agree. Like there was nothing. Like I said, like I thought that either the townspeople were gonna be there and they were like all gonna rally together. It's like, hey, this is our town. Like let's protect our town.
Yeah, they
So
leave
I
all the
guess
heavy
like
lifting to the Pokemon. Like what?
It would have been neat if
Yeah.
like all the I think when you said it, like all the Shaymin showed up, kind of more.
That's what I was expecting too. Like I was
Yeah.
like, because we see like essentially Giratina dies, right? And Shaymin comes and like tries to heal it. So my thought was like, oh, this is where all the Shaymin are gonna come out, and all of them together.
Yeah.
Kind of like
are gonna
Pokemon
heal this
Forever with
Giratina.
Celebi.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's like they're all gonna heal it, but just that one Shaymin did it by itself because it's royalty.
Yeah.
Our
and then
friendship.
we cut to the end,
And like when
and all these Shaman just kind of come out of the garden. And I was like, where were you the whole time?
Eating pancakes.
chilling. Yeah.
Just terrorizing the local IHOP. Well, that is pretty much the movie, unless I'm missing something else before we jump into the review.
Also, one thing I will say is I didn't like that for Newton, it was so easy for him to deactivate everything.
Oh, yeah.
I felt like there should have been more of a battle.
They kind of try to like brush it off as him saying, "I designed this machine so I can shut it down."
Yeah, but yeah, so you see, it makes Zero feel incompetent because it's like, did you not think about this beforehand?
Newton's the actual villain,
Like,
and Zero's actually the hero all along, trying to stop Newton.
Zero the hero.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Real quick, before we get in that part is like, and I kind of get your opinions on this. I do kind of wish like the other main cast of Pokemon from the teams were a bit more prevalent in the movies. Piplup, of course. Team Piplup, by the way, all the way. I'm glad Piplup was featured because I mean it's Piplup, but like Line Score and like even like Chimchar and Turtwig like were barely featured in this movie.
Yeah. Like that was also another thing. Like we see them eat, and then next time we really see all the other Pokemon be useful is on the ship. Is that what you said?
Yeah, on the very end is I know Ash pulls up Chimchar and Turtwig.
Weasel.
Oh yeah,
Weasel.
yeah,
That's right.
But right in the reverse world, he does pull out specifically Chimchar and Turtwig to be on the hover bike with him. But then when they're trying to like cover for Newton as he's hacking, Dawn and Ash just bring out other Pokemon. Which brings me to another note. Did you guys notice Brock's role in this movie?
He was pretty much useless. He was like, oh,
I didn't want to say it. The first time, but yeah.
The first time they go in, like he's forgotten. Like he was left out. And then they bring him back into the reverse world just because they're trying to I guess use a shortcut through that way.
Giratina kind of kidnaps them from the boat, if I recall.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yeah, but he was pretty much just like wasn't used whatsoever. He was pretty much like an afterthought, and again, he definitely forgot he was there. And I don't even think I saw him during like the battle with the glacier, where like you see Dawn and you see what was his name? Newton, but I didn't even see Brock. He probably was there, but that's just like how minimal his role was that I didn't even notice him there.
Totally. Dawn does a lot more with Baniri's Ice Beam and Swinub's Ice Shard. And every time I'm like, Brock, you have a Sudowoodo that knows Mimic. Like, come on.
Okay, good. You see, I was about to ask that, but then I thought it was like, oh no, I just made it up in my head. That Sudowoodo knew Mimic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think whoever made the movie doesn't like Brock. They're just like, we don't need him.
He was actually being replaced after this series too.
Right.
Yeah.
He's got 2 more movies.
This is his last hurrah.
Poor Brock. Well, with that in mind, let's jump into the ratings on a 1 to 10 scale. Nox, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, sure. I'd give it 6 Pokeballs out of 10.
Are those beast balls or just regular?
It's actually Beast
Pokeballs?
Balls. It has to be Beast Ball. It's the
What
best
if,
ball.
or what about 6 Gracidea flowers out of 10?
I'll say that 6 Gracidea flowers out of 10. Overall, I'd say like the movie isn't terrible. But there's a lot of like plot holes that aren't really filled. Um, I think what really saves it for me a little bit, like I said, is just seeing kind of uh, like Giratina in a animated format, as well as like a few other Pokemon. Um, I don't know. Like I said, like kind of like we talked about throughout the show. I'd say it's not the best overall Pokemon movie. But it's not terrible.
Got it. Fair. Manny, how about you?
Yeah, so for me this is like one of the reasons that I love doing the podcast, because we get different takes and points of view, because I definitely enjoyed the movie watching it. I didn't notice like the big plot holes until, Will and yourself, Knox, brought it up. So for me it was definitely enjoyable. Like for me it was like there wasn't nothing for me that took away from the plot. Like I felt like it was just like, okay, we found a Shaymin, we got to get it to where it's supposed to be, and that's what it was. Like they never went away from it. Giratina was definitely a big part of this movie. It wasn't like, oh, we'll just bring it up like right at the end. It'll just randomly appear for no reason because the name of the Pokemon is in the movie, so let's just bring it out. So yeah, Giratina definitely served a purpose. I love that it traveled through the reverse world, tracking them down. I love the whole aspect of like stay away from mirrors or reflections in general, because that's how Giratina comes out. And I love the music. The music in this movie was amazing. During the boat scene where Shaymin is flying, I think that's my favorite music that they used, or OST, because it kind of reminded me a bit of like the Jurassic Park theme, and it also gave me a bit of like Robin Williams' Pan, the movie, like the music that was used for that. So if you guys wouldn't have pointed out like the flaws, I would have given it a 10.
Wow. Okay.
But one thing I will say is that I didn't like how Dawn was kind of letting Shaymin act the way it was. Because I feel like earlier on in the anime, I would have excused it because she would have done the same with her own Pokemon. But at the point where we're at, like farther on in the like season 2, like if her Piplup would have acted out, she would have done something. She would have taken responsibility for it. So I didn't like that she was in a sense babying Shaymin and kind of like letting it get away with the way it was treating everybody. That was like, I think the only nitpick that I had about the movie before we came on to this podcast. So I think I'll just leave it at a 7 because I definitely enjoyed it. It was a movie that for me was definitely watchable, and there wasn't a time where I was like bored or anything. Like I didn't really take that much notes on it just because I enjoyed it a lot. So yeah, I'll leave it at a 7.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because that didn't really stand out to me until you said it, that Dawn's character at this point didn't really seem to match where she was in the show, especially having taken in a Pachirisu, who was kind of hard for her to handle, and how we see her learning to train it then wasn't really reflected in how much maturity she had in the movie necessarily. I think another reason this movie is a bit odd to me is how we're introduced to our heroes and what they're even doing before anything out of the ordinary happens. And as far as I can tell, they weren't really going on a specific mission or have any kind of conflict, which is something that I think this movie was lacking, and it definitely had an opportunity to add that, given that there wasn't one.
But that's kind of how the first Pokemon movie started. Like, they were just eating breakfast, and the trainer came out with a Dawn fan.
Right.
Just challenged him.
Right, they were being challenged, but then they're introduced to an invitation and then a conflict of like, hey, how do we reach this goal of getting to the first place without the strength or anything else that we have? Well, in this one, it's kind of like, oh, we're kind of gonna help the Shaymin even though he's a jerk to us, I guess, or she?
Yeah, because the Shaymin was hurt because it was just coming back from that explosion that it caused, which is why they go, oh, we need to take it to a Pokemon Center.
Oh yeah.
And then that's when we were given the whole ordeal.
Fair.
It's like, hey, it's the migration period. Like, go take it.
But I will say the difference is that Shaymin isn't very helpless, as we see like very soon throughout the movie. It's not like a baby. It's not necessarily.
No, it's just pampered.
Exactly. It's just very spoiled. While in other movies, they're like, even in the Darkrai one, they say, "Oh, we're here for the contest that Dawn wants to enter." And again, it's just for me a lot of missed opportunities. Being like, "Hey, maybe you guys had some conflict before that you were able to solve using access to the reverse world. That you can like do something here to help the town or something like that." But there just wasn't a larger impact that wasn't just centralized around Shaymin, which I found kind of unfortunate. I did appreciate the traveling. Like, to me, that's one of the biggest things about the movies is seeing the location that they're in. This one was actually inspired by Norway, so you get to see this clash of nature and ice, which is really cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I didn't know
That's
that.
cool. I thought it was like Iceland or Graceland itself.
I mean,
Greenland?
You know, Elvis.
yeah.
Elvis
I was like, Graceland?
Graceland.
I was like, I've been to Graceland. I don't think this is Graceland.
But that's just like an Elvis thing, right?
yeah,
Graceland?
it's an Elvis thing.
Okay. That's not an
Graceland
actual-
is also the name
yeah,
of the professor.
That's true. The scenery was beautiful. I will say that. I love the scenery. Yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite things about the movies is that they just make up these cities that are just beautiful to look at.
Yeah, and like this one had some cool shots, but like we never really explore where they are in the moment. Like what's this city? What's this place that you're traveling through? And again, like with the mirrors and like stay away from reflections to avoid Giratina, I want to see more of that. I want to be like, there's this oh no, this city is full of mirrors.
Literally in a garden full of mirrors when they just it's like, oh
Right.
Lord.
Exactly.
See,
and then they leave
for
and they're
me,
like,
that's-
oh, well, let's just go by the water and that's fine.
Yeah, and that was kind of like another nitpick. Like, why did they specifically say mirrors? If a water is in a mirror, it just reflects.
Well, they also say reflective surfaces, I'm pretty sure, but
Oh, okay. So then I missed that then.
maybe, yeah, or maybe that's the just implication I got from it because we see Giratina coming for them on the train. And this was a cool detail that I liked, is that when Shaymin's transforming, all the light from it actually cancels out the reflections. And so it's like, no one even knew Giratina was coming for them there. But yeah, with all that, it just feels like a very average movie to me, which is kind of disappointing because I see that potential. I see how they could have used time better, and developed those relationships more, and just this world that we're in, which is what makes the Pokemon movies each stand out to me individually. So, with all that said, I think I'm going to give it 5 out of 10 Gracie Flowers.
Well, then you're not invited to the next migration.
It's fine. They happen all over the place, right?
No pancakes for you.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, waffles are better.
No, No,
French toast.
Ooh,
It's
fair.
a whole nother podcast.
True, true. So let's jump into some trivia about the movie. And there's a decent amount, mostly kind of related to the lore of the show on the grander scale. This is the first movie to have opening credits take place during the title sequence. The first to be a sequel to a previous movie. It's the first movie where we see Brock's family and Dawn's mother appear. And this movie marks the second time when a legendary Pokemon from a previous movie reappears. The only other time was in Lucario and the Mystery of Mew, where Mew makes a second appearance after Mew Strikes Back. Origin Form and Skyform, or Origin Form Giratina and Skyform Shaymin debuted in this movie prior to their game debut in Pokemon Platinum. It actually points out that we see Lucas and Brendan, as Mannie mentioned, the 7 evolutions at the beginning of the movie as well. Despite the fact that the move Substitute has existed since Generation 1, this is the first time any Pokemon has used Substitute in the anime. And this is more of my fun fact, is that we also see Substitute used for the first time in the anime during the equivalent season of this movie, which is Season 11, Battle Dimension. New in Graceland describes the reverse world as a distorted world, referring to how it is based on the distortion world from Pokemon Platinum. Now, we actually didn't talk too much about this, but Manny, did you know about the difference in names between Giratina's world in the anime versus in the games?
I had a sense of the name. I didn't know it as the Distortion World, but I mostly knew it as the Underworld.
Oh.
Just because of the memes is like, oh, Giratina is the devil and he's gonna take you to hell.
I see. Okay.
Or to the underworld. But I feel like Newton should probably market the reverse world. There's like lots of houses. Make it a nice 5-star resort, make some money. I don't know what he would use the money for because like I don't think we had a sense of like what he eats for food or how he gets water.
Shaymin.
Well, what if there's no Shaymin in there?
That's true.
So that was definitely like one of my questions because like we see Team Rocket, like they bring him stuff. It's like, well, where did that stuff come from?
Fun.
But I definitely loved the way the reverse world looked. Everything about it was so cool. So it was really cool to see it and introduced as the reverse world. I wonder why that decision was made instead of the distortion world.
Fun fact, in Japanese, it's actually known as the Torn World.
But Nox, do you want to talk a bit about the difference between this realm versus the version that we see in the games for Platinum?
So like the one we see in Platinum, it's a lot of like this floating, kind of like floating islands, there's like a little forest area, there's craters and stuff, but those are primarily for game mechanics to put boulders into to unlock stuff, with the 3 Lake Guardians. But I would say like overall the reverse world in the anime is a lot more fleshed out. Like you're seeing like a lot more of the effects of it. You know, there's like you were saying, Manny, there's like buildings and stuff that he needs to rent out and make some extra cash. And
yeah.
and it's like it's literally it's name. It's the reverse world. Whereas like in the games, it is literally just there's not really much life in the distortion world. It's literally more in the line of like hell, I guess you could say, in the sense because of the fact of everything is kind of barren, kind of dry. There's not really much life besides Giratina. The only similarities between the two is gravity. Gravity doesn't make any sense in either one of those worlds at all. But I would say like that's definitely kind of like the big differences is like the anime one is really, really fleshed out. Like you get like the sense that it is a reverse world. It is the upside down world. Whereas the distortion world literally feels like the Japanese name for it, the torn world. where it's kind of like if anyone's ever played World of Warcraft, kind of like Outland, where it's just barren and broken and shattered, like a world that used to be a world, but it's not really a world anymore.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty barren. It's overhyped, honestly. And I think that just might be from people not who haven't played the game, kind of expecting it to be this very expansive experience, but in some ways it's a glorified cave with puzzles.
It really is. That's a great way to describe that.
Yeah, so during like my movie experience, like watching experience, like my fandom of like thriller genre movies kind of came out when they first went into the reverse world, because my first thought was that there was gonna be like kind of like in Jordan Peele's movie Us, there was gonna be like opposite versions of our characters as well that were gonna come out. But that's just because I watched too many thriller movies, and like that was the first thing that came out. It was like, because in the movie Us, there's an opposite world, and there's two versions of yourself.
Oh, you're gonna.
So I was like, oh, it would be so trippy if like a different Ash came out.
I liked this concept more. The fact that it's a reverse world, like they're very specifically supposed to be opposites, but it's not like an opposite universe. It's more that like this is the negative space of our world, basically. And the reason you wouldn't want to start a hotel here is because if they destroy in the real world, the one in the reverse world also is gonna go boom.
That's true.
But yeah, it is a very, I think, great take on what it could be. And naming it the reverse world did bother me a bit, because it's like, no, we have a name for it. It's distorted world, or the distortion world. But because of what they tweaked in terms of the concept and the relationship, I was okay with it.
Yeah. So are you two like excited to see what they do, or if they do something with the distorted world in the remakes?
So I kind of know,
I don't know. I don't.
and
Oh,
say
okay.
I don't want to spoil too much in regards, because I don't remember if it was in a trailer or not. It's impossible to get on Twitter now without seeing the spoilers for BDSP. Either way, like I'll just say, like in general, like I'm excited to see kind of what they do with like Giratina, and even if, let's say, they don't like have the distortion world as a whole, like having like what they do with, like, because it's based off of Diamond and Pearl, so there's not technically a distortion world at that point. What
Right.
they do with like Giratina though, like if he's literally just going to be chilling in in the cave, and this new generation of like 10 to 15-year-olds or and older are going to first time discover Giratina, kind of like you did, Will.
Right.
Or if it's going to be more, and maybe even more later in like a DLC idea for it.
And for you, Will, like, if you were to like relive, now that you know that it was actually in the Diamond and Pearl games, are you gonna like try to find it?
Well, Giratina was, but the distortion world wasn't. The
Mhm.
way it works in Platinum is that it's kind of tied to the climax of the game, but you can't like go back. It's very much like a one-way cave going through it. And I would be excited if they added more to it, or made it something that you could access. Like maybe connected to the Grand Underground that has a secret doorway to hell.
Ooh.
Just given what we've seen so far the only time it's really appeared in Platinum, I'm okay with it. It's just kind of there. It doesn't add too much, unfortunately, though. I think it does have the potential that we see in the movie for sure. Uh, but this does. Speaking of experiences, I was hoping to get your guys's kind of meet cute, or like first time that you discover or interacted with Shaymin in the games, if any.
I did Oak's Litter was the first time I got Shaymin back in the day. Um, So yeah, I got the OG Shaymin still in my game.
Nice.
My first experience will be with Legends.
Okay.
So definitely excited for that. And it was funny because like the timing of it all, because I had literally watched the movie the day before, and I think that was like our original date that we were supposed to record the episode was when they announced Shaymin. And I told Will, I was like, dude, like the timing of it all, like it was so funny because like we literally were watching the movie and getting ready to review it, and the Sky Warrior is announced, but in its land form.
Right.
And yeah, and in terms of like Giratina, like I'm hoping that Legends is a success, and if either it becomes like maybe like an anthology or like a trilogy game, or if they do add DLC, I would love to see if they add Giratina to this game and how they would handle that as well. Like in terms of like the distortion world and all that.
So for me, I met a Shaymin as a kid when my friend showed me this Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl, and I was like, what? Like, what is this? And that's when they told me that if I used an action replay and just went straight east of the Pokemon League, I would reach this really long peninsula.
What is long?
Extremely long. Like, it takes minutes to get to the end of it. But when you do, is where you encounter a Shaymin that you can battle and catch. And that's where I was like, I have no idea what this Pokemon is. I caught it, and then when this movie got announced, and then the event happened in Platinum, is where I was like, oh, this is what this Pokemon is about. So it was a very interesting experience to me discovering a Pokemon that's in the game and programmed, but it just is locked behind an artificial event that didn't happen.
It didn't. It technically came to North America, I think, in late 2009, right?
Right, but was it for Diamond and Pearl or just Platinum?
Oh no, I'm sorry. It was for just Platinum. I thought you were saying like it never came. I was like,
oh yeah,
the
yeah.
Arceus Salute didn't come.
That's true. That's not the one that really didn't come. But yeah, I mean, just for Diamond and Pearl, because I did also do Oak's Leather in Platinum once that was officially released. And I was like, I know what this is. And I was like, oh, I know why it's over here. Why you have to go to like this specific location to use Oak's Leather, because that corresponds to where it was when I just walked across water and land to find this little hedgehog.
See, I didn't even know about it until Platinum, because like during that era was kind of when I was like really secretive about like I'm still playing Pokemon type, that point in pretty much a lot of Pokemon fans' life. And that was the first time I discovered it, because I saw the event pop up here in North America, and I was like, oh heck yeah, I'll go get a new Pokemon. And that was the first time I like ever saw it was Platinum, or even knew about it really, besides the movie.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a Platinum Pokemon more than like a Diamond and Pearl one, given the event and the accessibility of it. And last note of trivia here. Some of the sounds used for Giratina are recycled roars from the Japanese movie Mothra.
Oh, that's why it sounded so cool.
Oh, that's
I loved the sound of like Giratina when it opened its mouth and it just made like the noise. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
It also weirdly ties to what we talked about in the last movie discussion, because the cry for Palkia is actually the same sound that they use for a creature in Star Wars. So
yeah, that creature's a meme because it's like and it's like running around. It's like yeah.
Well, there you have it. Any other thoughts or comments before we close out today's episode?
glad Gliscor was in the movie for a second.
Oh shoot! Okay, I actually was thinking about this. I'm like, does he have Gligar or Gliscor at this point? I don't remember.
No, he had Gliscor.
Yeah, Gliscor.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, Mannie was actually on the episode where it evolved, I believe.
Yes. So he basically pretty much used everybody except for Gliscor.
No.
He used Staravia, he used Chimchar, Turtwig, and Buizel, but no Gliscor whatsoever.
It's very sad because Gliscor is like one of my favorite Pokemon from this generation, and it's one of the first things I'm shiny hunting in BDSP is a shiny Gligar to become a shiny Gliscor. So it was really sad. Like when I was rewatching, it's like you get Gliscor for like food, and that's it.
Yeah. Will they change the shiny form of Gligar again in this gen?
Oh, don't! Oh no! Please don't! Let's not this be a Gengar situation where there's like 17 shades of Gengar.
They don't change the shiny. I think they change the base Gligar like every few generations. I
They
just can't
do.
decide if it's pink or purple.
That's right. They switched it from like literally its initial release, and every generation it has. It's or every other however many. I know you're talking about where they can't decide what color it exactly is.
Nox, thank you so much for coming on today and talking about Giratina and Sky Warrior with us.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate you guys bringing me on. It was a lot of fun. It really was.
Yeah, same, dude. It was a pleasure doing this podcast with you. Hopefully you come back soon.
Oh yeah,
as well as Steph. Shout out to Steph. She did an amazing episode. So hopefully we get to hear more from you, both of you, later on in the future. Will, you better bring them back.
All right, you can drag me to the distortion world.
Yeah, like I said, if you don't bring them back, no pancakes, no waffles. You're not invited to the festival.
That's a hard bargain, yeah. But Nox, if people want to find you on the internet, where can they do that?
Sure. So the best place to find me would be twitch.tv/Noxtric, and Noxtric is spelled Noxtric. And it's literally everywhere else, the same spelling, Twitter and Instagram, all Noxtric. Like I said, really, really enjoyed this. This is a lot of fun.
And go on by it and check out streams there. And if you want a new episode of the podcast comes out, you can follow us on Twitter, YouTube, all that stuff. And let us know in the comments, what did you think about this movie? Some discoveries that you made from the podcast, anything that we missed that you guys want to share, feel free to let us know there as well. But as always, I've been Will.
Mi nombre es Mannie.
And you can call me Nox.
And we will see you in Sinnoh. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.